to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Approval of minutes of 3/25/15. I understand Lou has reviewed these minutes and has recommended approval. Do I hear a motion?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Okay, the first item on the agenda is a request for determination of applicability for 1550 Salem Street. It's under the local bylaw only.
The North Andover Wetlands Protection Bylaw. The North Andover Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing on Wednesday, April 22nd, 2015 at 7 p.m. in the Town Hall Meeting Room, second floor, located at 120 Main Street, North Andover, Massachusetts, for the filing of a request for determination of applicability by Pamela and Henry Smith to alter land at 1550 Salem Street, map 106B, parcel 54, North Andover, Massachusetts, for the purpose of septic system repair and new water service within the buffer zone to an isolated vegetated wetland. Plans are available at the Conservation Office, 1600 Osgood Street, Suite 2035, by Louis Napoli, Chairman, NACC.
Good evening. For the record, my name is John Moore, and I work for the Moore and Cameron Group. We're here tonight representing Pam and Henry Smith, who are also with me tonight, regarding a request for determination of applicability filing for their property located at 1550 Salem Street. What you see before you, the plan that you see before you, Salem Street's located at the bottom of the plan, which is actually the westerly side of the lot. What you see in purple is the perimeter of the lot itself. We're here tonight for a request for determination for a replacement of a septic system. It failed a Title V inspection. Bill Manual of Wetlands and Land Management went out and flagged the wetlands. We actually had an isolated wetland here. Bill had flagged a separate isolated wetland and then a third isolated wetland. When I met with Jen out at the site last week, she had actually connected these wetland series, and the plan that you see before you shows the wetlands based on that revision. Currently, there's an existing septic tank and leach field out on the front of the property. As you can see, 100 feet from these wetlands is this green line right here. Very limited space to get a septic system anywhere on this property that would be 100 feet in the front yard. The lot is 474 feet deep, so you do have the option of putting a leach field out in the rear yard. But what you have there is the rear yard is pretty much all fill, and then it climbs up a real steep slope out in the back. So to put a leach field 100 feet from this wetland out in the back, you would actually have a force main. You would have to come around this side under the driveway, approximately 300 feet back. That force main wouldn't be able to drain back because of the existing topography, so it would either have to be set 4 feet below the ground or insulated for frost protection. We'd actually be grading in the buffer zone. We'd be able to keep the leach field out, but we'd be doing substantial amounts of grading. And based on where the current system is, we felt that the system as proposed was actually less impacting to the resource area, based on the fact that we are able to keep the leach field 84 feet from the wetland edge. And again, it is an isolated wetland under your local bylaw only for jurisdiction. The state regulations are 50 feet from a wetlands. The local Board of Health regulations is 100. We have filed with the local Board of Health for a variance request for the reduction in that setback, and we'll be meeting with them on September 30th. But again, the leach field would be 84 feet from the wetlands. It's actually further away than where the current leach field is. Same thing with the septic tank. Under the local Board of Health regulations, you have to be 75 feet from a wetland with a septic tank. We're proposing 72, state code is 25. And again, we've requested that variance from the Board of Health. Based on my initial discussions with the Board of Health, they didn't see any major issues with that revision based on with that variance, based on the amount of space that we have on the property. The other issue that we actually have going on is this property is actually serviced by a well. That well is actually going to have to be abandoned. There is an existing water service out in the street that we'll be tying into. That water service will be coming around the right-hand side of the house, and that work will be the closest work to the wetland resource area. The actual water trench work for the water service is about 51 feet from the edge of the wetlands. All work is in areas that are already lawn or manicured landscaped areas, so we're not doing any work within areas that currently aren't already maintained. Grading, very little grading. Where the water service is going in, there'll be no grading. Very minor grading where the septic is, and the reason for that is to create the 2% pitch over the leach field that's required under the state code to make sure that water doesn't pond on the top of the system. But that's the extent of the grading, and because of the fact we're trying to tie into the existing inverted foundation, we will have about a half a foot of grading over the septic tank to provide cover over the septic tank. We are located within natural heritage. However, this is an exempt activity under 10.146 because it's the replacement of a septic system within areas that are existing lawn or maintained landscape areas. At this point, I'd like to open it up to questions from the commission.
We don't usually have septic system filings as RDAs, but since, first of all, the work is around the front of the house and the wetland is around the back of the house, I mean, there's very little chance of any sort of incursion. And second, this wetland's a little bit on the, funky side. It's in the middle of their backyard. Their swing sets in the middle. I mean, they didn't just build, this backyard was actually probably way back when.
Yeah, the house, we think it was built around 1971.
The backyard is a huge hill that just obviously drains right down into the middle of their backyard. There wasn't even water ponded there. It was somewhat, squishy, so to speak, when we were out there. And there's definitely hydric soils all through the, developed lawn. There's a lot of fill material in there too. In a lot of the areas that weren't originally flagged, you really couldn't even get into the soil. But it was clear from the topography that the areas are connected. There's sphagnum moss all over the backyard. But, it isn't sort of your typical wetland that we're dealing with, and the photos show that.
Okay. Any questions, Al?
None here.
Joe?
Just so the record's clear, you had said you've applied for waivers with the Board of Health and that you were going to the meeting on September 30th. You mean April 30th?
April 30th, correct.
Okay. Just want to be clear on that. The abandonment of the well was, I think, an important part. The other part, does the Board of Health typically defer to the Conservation Commission when it comes to the distance of that 100 feet? Or
We had a lot of discussions back and forth with the Board of Health and Conservation, and they actually said we really didn't get a whole lot of direction either way with regards to them. They did say, however, that they felt that the variance for the reduction in the setback was warranted based on the fact that the house is in between the wetlands and the septic system, and the fact that we're actually getting the septic further away from the wetlands than what currently exists.
So those are all the points I wanted to make certain that we make clear to the Board of Health in support of this application, because I think, the mission here is to get a failed septic system working, which is always a good thing. And all of those other physical separations are just a bonus to us,
Correct.
at least to me. So I have no other questions.
About your leach field, you note on the plan that there's a infiltrator chambers and a conventional leach bed. How does that work differently than a normal?
What you're required to do when you propose these alternative technologies, under the approvals from the DEP, you're also supposed to show that you could fit a conventional septic on the property. So we're not building the conventional septic, but we're showing that if DEP 5 years later says, you know what, we found out we really don't like these infiltrators, you got to pull them out and put in a conventional stone and pipe, we have to show on the plan now that we can fit a conventional stone and pipe, even though it may require some local upgrades, we can physically fit one. So that's why it's shown.
I see. Okay, you're not proposing both.
No.
You're proposing the infiltrators.
And then we're showing that we
The
could
leach.
fit a conventional, and this is what the size would be.
No more questions.
Okay, Deb?
No questions.
You indicate on the plan that the existing well is going to be used for irrigation, not
Yes.
abandoned.
Correct.
What precautions are you taking? Because I assume the well goes into the house and then the tank and everything like that is inside the house. What precautions are going to be taken to separate the system so the chance of it being used to service the house is eliminated?
Well, we spoke to the Board of Health briefly about that. We'll discuss more of it with them when we meet with them on April 30th. But usually what they'll do is they'll cut the line on the outside, and they're going to be rerouting it to the spigots outside or the irrigation system only. And the well itself will be labeled that it's not a potable water supply.
Just as a follow-up to that, it may be great that you're talking with the Board of Health, but you absolutely need to speak with the North Andover. When you go to get your water service connection, there's actually Safe Drinking Water Act requirements with regards to separation of those systems, and I believe that well can no longer go into the house.
Right.
So you just make sure you get that clear.
All right, I have a recommendation before me for a -3 determination with conditions for erosion control and pre- and post-construction inspections. Do I hear a motion from anyone?
So move.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion to issue a -3 with conditions and for erosion control and pre- and post-construction inspections. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so that takes care of it.
Thank you very much.
The next item on the agenda is Old Salem Village for a request for a determination of applicability.
Pardon?
Your mailings, your certificates of mailing?
I don't have them. Libby must, I thought she said everything was delivered to you.
Pursuant to the authority of the Wetlands Protection Act, Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, as amended, and the North Andover Wetland Protection Bylaw, the North Andover Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing on Wednesday, April 22nd, 2015, at 7 p.m. in the Town Hall Meeting Room, second floor, located at 120 Main Street, North Andover, Mass., for the filing of a determination of applicability by applicant Key Lime Incorporated to alter land at Old Salem Village Condos, Unit 4, map 107B, parcel 16, North Andover, Mass., for the purpose of construction of a driveway and landscaping plan within the buffer zone to a bordering and isolated vegetated wetland. Plans are available at the Conservation Office, 1600 Osgood Street, Suite 2035, by Louis Nepley, Chairman.
Thank you. Okay, sir.
Good evening, gentlemen. My name is Ben Osgood. I'm one of the owners of Key Lime. My partner, Jay Burke, is here. This is an application that actually was before you a year and a half ago when we modified the original order. There was originally a duplex on Lot 1 and 2, or Unit 1 and 2, and we separated them and made 2 singles. The foundation for Lot 1, Lot 2 is totally built and finished and lived in. The foundation on Lot 1 is installed. We simply, the clock ran out on the underlying order of conditions. So that's the reason that we're back before you.
And Lot 1 isn't on here, this is just Lot 4.
I'm sorry, Lot 4, sorry, no, not Lot 1, Lot 4. Okay. That's a little bit different. That house is under construction. And all that's left to be done outside is the banking adjacent to the road. It has stone rubble and some surplus fill. The hot top driveway is, the binder coat has been put in. The house is, the trim is being done on the inside now. We modified this plan when we, last August, I believe it was, and we rotated the house slightly so that it actually ends up further from the isolated wetland that's there. It was originally at 67 feet, I believe. Now it's at 80 feet. So I think if you have any questions.
None here.
So this is, the entire Old Salem Village order has expired. On this particular lot, we agreed, we had asked them to file one notice of intent for the remaining work, not piecemeal it, but this one was so far along and it was sold, and they didn't want to wait the 2 weeks and the appeal period and whatever, so that's why this one is in front of you separately.
But just to be clear on what you just said, I mean, but it's more than the convenience of timing. It also is worthy of such a consideration because of all these other factors, that it is farther away than the originally approved.
Yeah, I mean, that was already modified and approved under the old order. It will still be a part of the old order, so it will still need a certificate of compliance. It won't be released. This just allows them to get doing the work, basically. It is really about the convenience of it, and it being the kind of work that doesn't really require a full order to get done.
The house is sold, and the new homeowner wants to move in May 15th. So that's the schedule, the timeframe we're on.
I didn't really want to have too much paperwork outstanding on an order that's already under another DEP file number, plus having an RDA, plus we have the NOI coming up later this evening. So, but like you said, this
I just
is...
wanted to understand that it wasn't just simply the matter of convenience of time, and there were other things that
Right.
we would consider this a negative determination regardless.
It's already built, foundations in, all that, yeah.
Okay, I'm clear on that.
Do you have the plans down there? Were you just looking at the plans then?
I have a set, miscellaneous set of plans here. One of them is identified at foundation location, building 4. Is that,
Yes, I think there's the original plan, and then there's the revision, which was the August 14th plan, I believe. 2014.
this plan is dated April 21st.
This is just shows the location of the, this is an updated version of this.
Updated version of
Here's
this.
in front of you now is,
Okay, she's got it on the screen. She's got it on the screen, okay. All right, thanks.
It doesn't look like it shows the driveway. I've got the one that says foundation location, building
Right.
4. Is there a
There's a
second one?
second set, which is what is on the screen.
we have all of
There's 4 there with the topography and the driveway.
the driveway is in as well.
But that's the
Binder.
originally approved location.
This is the modified approved location. The original approved location had the house turned toward the entrance to Old Salem Village.
I was looking at the issue date up in the corner. I wasn't looking at all the revision dates next to it. I'm sorry.
But we got the as-built to make sure, we're approving something under the RDA, that the house that was built actually conforms to the plan. So that's why you have the as-built and the proposed, so that you could see what they said they were going to do is what they did.
So it looks like a front entrance garage? Or am I, okay, so the street is that way. Is there a wetland line on that plan?
Yep, the wetland's across the street. It's an isolated.
Is that EP 3-2? And then the larger one across the road, okay. Is there a description, I mean, we got a general description in your write-up of what you were going to do. It says build the driveway and landscape, pretty much. Is that all the detail we have?
The driveway's already in. There's a binder coat.
Yep.
Right.
Just put the top coat on it.
So there's just no grading on the lot, no landscaping, no seeding, nothing.
Do you want to approve
Couple days
that?
of exterior work.
I know, it's a
And
small...
then let it grow.
Right, we have to put the loom down, get rid of the stones that are all been raked down to that lower location on that right side. There's probably 2 or 3 loads of rubble. And then loam, seed, put the shrubbery in.
Is there any need for erosion control on this?
They have erosion control, but he does specify in his RDA that if anything needs to be refreshed or added, that they will add it. So we could certainly condition that as, with our pre and post construction.
No more questions?
Yep.
So all the work will be done then prior to inspection? So when Jen goes out before May 15th?
Yes.
I heard you say that you're going to be checking everything, seeing it's okay.
What happens between now and we finish the house, and then there's another plan that gets created, which is the final plan, and that shows all the sidewalks, location of air conditioning compressors, anything around the house at all. From that plan, they calculate the impervious areas, because there's a set amount of impervious area that was predictable, and then there's the actual that gets done. Almost always, on almost all the plans, we come in below what was set above originally.
Thank you.
Okay, I have a recommendation before us of a -3 determination with post-construction inspection, and I would suggest that we add the confirmation of erosion control in place. Do I hear a recommendation?
So moved.
All in favor?
On discussion, I just want to make, gets more to the administrative piece of it. I completely understand and support the physical construction that they're asking for. But administratively, so we've got an expired order that cites the lot. We have it's about to be likely a negative determination, which requires them to do just a few handful of conditions to meet it. And then we're going to have a new NOI coming through that's going to be silent as to Lot 4.
It's going to be silent to a lot. So we can have this discussion now, or we can have it later, but my advice to them...
I want to be clear that the vote we're about to take is going to supplement the second piece. Will it, in your opinion?
It's hard to say. So again, my advice to them was to do one of 2 things. Do this like Mollytown did it, where they closed out the entire order and then re-permitted the remaining buildings that needed to be constructed. That was one way to do it. We've also done this a second way, which is the way we did the Meadows, where the order had expired. He couldn't do any more work on the rear portion of the site, that phase 3. So we've rolled the whole old order into a brand-new order, which didn't sign off on any of the old pieces, although we did some confirmation of the drainage, I remember, but we didn't give them a COC on the old order. We just rolled it all into a new order, and now that new order is out there and has its X amount of time on it. They're not doing it this way. They're basically leaving the old order expired and just re-permitting the new work without closing out the old order. And we're going to have a new order. If there is any other work that needs to be done on this project other than exactly what they permit, which is the buildings that aren't constructed, the final coat of pavement, if there's anything that's not in compliance, they're going to have to permit that too.
As yet another.
As yet
action.
another, because
Yeah.
we don't know what's in compliance and what's not in compliance. We do have a lot of as-built information. I'm not saying that I think there's any, egregious non-compliances,
No,
and the
I'm not
drainage
suggesting that.
system's been working for a long time. I'm just saying, they're permitting some very specific things, and that's all that's going to be permitted.
There's still on.
Your eyes are open wide going into this, right? I want to make sure we're,
I mean, it's a fuzzy area,
the
that's
vote
for
we're about to
sure.
take is going to set that vision in
Well,
motion.
We just want to finish. We're almost at the end. We want to clean it up and get it done as soon as we can. We're willing to do it any way that the board wants us to do it.
Other than,
If it weren't for the closing date looming, we wouldn't be doing it this way. I can say that safely. I don't
On
think,
this particular RDA, yes, the rest of it, I've been advising all along, and we're still doing it a different way, which is fine. I mean, they even had permitted under 2 separate NOIs, and I said, no way, because that's just a paperwork nightmare to have more, an RDA and 2 NOIs hanging out there. As it is, it's going to be somewhat logistical to be closing all of this stuff out, because most of the project's going to be closed out under an old expired order, and now there's going to be a new order out there for work that's yet to be done, which is somehow going to have to incorporate some of the old order. I'm still not sure how this is going to work, but we're not there yet. We're just on this RDA.
under the old water, have there been partial certificates of compliance issued? Nothing?
No, nothing.
How many houses you got built out there? You got them sold?
There are 24 lived in, there are 26
None of
counting
these people
4.
have requested a certificate of compliance? Their banks haven't requested
not
it?
even partials, yeah.
No parcels.
And then hopefully that,
Because it's just too difficult to do it, it's
well,
on a piecemeal
you're
basis.
going to have to at some point in
Well,
time get a
We're gonna have to do
certificate
the
of
whole
compliance.
subdivision and.
And then if, there's work that, under the old order, that needs to be done or that hasn't been completed, you're going to have to file again.
We have no objection to doing whatever work's required under the old order. We had suggested that,
If I may, how much bond are we holding on the project? What are we holding for money?
15,000 plus interest.
Half of the original, at least.
That's all we have, 15,000?
Well, it's half of what the original amount was.
Yeah, I got
We
you.
built the whole road.
Yeah, it's been a long time, yeah.
We've done all the work.
So I guess basically, in order for you to get that back, they'd have to get a certificate, right?
Well, ultimately, the entire subdivision needs
They'll have to get
in each lot will ultimately need a certificate of compliance recorded against each unit. So I guess that's our trump card, bond,
mean, that's
plus
not-
the ability to get a certificate.
When we finish, we're gonna come in and get one certificate.
You need more than one certificate.
Well, I mean.
Jay, and
for the
I
whole
understand that, so what we have is an old permit expired with still some conditions that obligate you to do things, like complete the project and to get compliance. And we have what will be this action on the negative determination in a future NOI that we're gonna hear, which is gonna obligate different things. So there's still gonna be, you have to comply with the new order, the old order, and if there is any issues, might require yet another filing to go in and do additional work. But as long as we're all understanding that that's a possibility, I'm not saying it's an inevitability, it's a possibility, it's a little awkward, it's a lot awkward, but
But it has
I
no-
think it's legal.
Well, I agree with you. I think it is too, and I think also the action that's on the motion that's before you tonight is also legal. They're asking for a -3, and this fits the bill without helping anybody out. This is a -3 based on the 4 corners in front of us. Don't look at anything else.
There's a whole bunch of, and I guess it's not really hard, but we have to also remember there's a whole bunch of continuing conditions which apply to this lot, which aren't part of this determination, but still apply to this lot because they're part of the original order on this lot.
All this determination is going to do is allow him to complete this lot 4.
Yep, that's
So then he's got to have to get a certificate of compliance for lot 4, based on the expired order of conditions and whatever
Yeah, we're not there yet.
continuing conditions may be,
Yeah.
but we're not at that point yet, and
Yeah,
we may not see that for a while, chances are.
I don't
So
wanna-
as long as the applicant is aware of the approach he's taken and is perfectly happy with it, then
We would have rather have done it under just an enforcement, just get the work off the old plans and do what we,
That wouldn't,
yeah, I know, there's
I
not.
know that
was-
that's always the preferred, this is the
Well-
best we can do.
Yeah, I understand.
The -3 is the
So,
best we can do. It's really
I
kind
mean,
of
it's just,
a...
it's a very complicated area.
Yeah,
and,
yeah, no question.
We want to get it done, and we'll do what we have to do.
I think the
We'll
paper
meet your
shuffle is more
requirements.
complicated than the work.
yeah.
The paper shuffle is far more complicated. The work is easy.
Oh, absolutely, there's so many plans, it's just,
As long as the record shows all these three issues that we're
Okay.
talking about, we should be all right.
I
So
approve.
there's already a motion and a
Okay,
second.
we've already had a vote.
Yeah,
It was on
taken,
discussion.
We were just in discussion on the motion second.
Okay, now, is there a vote? Let's see, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, anybody opposed? Nope, that's it. You've got a -3 for lot 4. Now, the next item on the agenda is the new notice of intent for Old Salem Village.
This one. The rest of the pile.
Oh, actually, I do have the cards on this one. I don't know why I don't have the RDA ones, but
Do we have a
maybe we should
number
put it.
for that, Jen?
We do not have a number. The fee has not cleared revenue according to,
Yes, that means we won't be able to close anything. If we come to an agreement on everything, we can't close tonight without a number from the state.
The North Andover Wetlands Protection Bylaw. The North Andover Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing on Wednesday, April 22nd, 2015, at 7 p.m. in the Town Hall Meeting Room, second floor, located at 120 Main Street, North Andover, Massachusetts, for the filing of a request for determination of applicability. This isn't it.
that's not the one?
No, this is Pamela and Henry Smith.
Also, do you have any extra copies of the notice, Jen?
Oh, that just came out of the folder. Maybe.
All we got is plans.
We don't have,
Ace's letter.
we don't have copies of the notice of intent application.
That's because this was refiled. I told Libby that today. I thought she said you were going to bring some. She sent them via email, but she didn't. No. I mean, we have 2 copies, but the commission doesn't have them.
I have a copy.
We'll show
You
it.
can-
We'll show it. Is that the only one you have? Table?
I had one,
It looks like,
All right, we have one here, Jen. Joe
I have
Joe and
extras.
Joe and I can share this one, Ben. I don't know, do you need one, Jack?
There we go.
All right, good, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Um,
All right, well,
This had to be refiled because,
take a
as I
shot.
said, it was originally filed as 2 separate orders.
I think I have that one.
You have that one?
I think,
Are we right here?
Pursuant to the authority of the Wetlands Protection Act, Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40 is amended, and the North Andover Wetlands Protection Bylaw, the North Andover Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing on Wednesday, April 22nd, 2015, at 7 p.m. in the Town Hall Meeting Room, second floor, located at 120 Main Street, North Andover, Mass. 01845, for the filing of a notice of intent by Key Lime Inc. to alter land at Old Salem Village condos, Mayflower Drive and Hepatica Drive, map 107B, lot 16, for the purpose of constructing condominium units number 11-12, number 35, and number 36-37, completing building driveways and landscaping at unit number 1, and roadway completion within the buffer zone to bordering and isolated vegetated wetland. Plans are available at the Conservation Office, 1600 Osgood Street, Suite 2035, by Louis Napoli, Chairman, NACC.
tough one.
So Ben and I were just discussing that Lot 1 has been left off of this. It's in your plans, but it's not mentioned, so this isn't going to close this evening, so they can certainly add that in.
Just an omission?
Again, I think in the revisions of going from 3 separate filings to 2 separate filings, there were too many plans, somehow we lost Lot 1.
We apologize for it, but it did get...
I know, but there is one that says building 1.
There's a plan, but it's not mentioned in any of the paperwork.
We don't seem to have all the paperwork, so maybe what you do is give us an introduction as to what's going on, and then we will continue the hearing. And then you can get us all all the paperwork that's required.
There are, under this application, there should be 6 lots. Those are the remaining 6 vacant lots that are jurisdictional. There is, I guess there's 1 that remains, no, there are 2, I'm sorry, 2 that are non-jurisdictional, that are not built on. These 6 include Lot 1, which is a single family, as I explained before. The foundation is in, we were just working on it. We ran out of time on the clock. Then there is Lot 11 and 12, which came before you under the modification also. They're not really lots, they're units, 11 and 12. Those are proposed to be built exactly as they're shown in the original plan and the way they are now. Or not exactly, there is a driveway comes in on the side on the latest plan, that's all. Then there's Lot 35, which is a freestanding single unit that is next to the isolated wetland. And then Lot 36 and 37, that's a duplex, and it's next to the isolated wetland. And included in that request is the work to finish the road, the granite curbing, the sidewalk, and the road top. And that's sort of it in a nutshell. But there are a lot of drawings.
So in front of you now is the 35 and 36 and 37. 35 is actually slightly larger than was originally proposed, but is now farther from the wetland. That was the only unit we saw that came in on the plans that had changed from any other version of the drawing we had seen. Everything else conforms to what's always been presented to us, but 35 is slightly different.
And it's only larger by a very small
It's
amount.
longer,
It's a
but
little longer.
again, it's moved farther from the wetland, so didn't think that was a major issue.
Then the,
There's 2. This is, you should have this drawing, this is 11 and 12.
yeah,
Again, this was a prior modification,
I'm looking at that, Jen. Where's 12?
right next door. 11's got a big number, 12's got a smaller number.
the
What you
Okay.
see,
furthest to the left.
I got it, I see it
What
now.
you see in gray was the original location of those 2 units. We have a modification in the file that moved them farther when the units 9 and 10 were separated.
Okay.
It moved this 11, 12 building further away. It is right at, and was previously, right at the 50, so as always, we've had no incursions into the 50, so I'm sure it'll get constructed as shown.
Have any questions from the board?
Well, if I may, I guess I understand what's being requested with respect to the work. I'm a little confused as to the vehicle that's getting us there. This is an application for a new notice of intent with a new DEP number, yet we have an old order of conditions from an old notice of intent, an old order of conditions, correct? Mm-hmm. And that one remains expired but not closed.
Correct.
So I guess, before I try to wrap my head around the work, which doesn't seem extremely complicated, what's our best procedure with respect to getting them where they need to go? How do we help them get there better?
Well, that's what I was trying to explain previously when we were talking under the
Yeah, I'm just
RDA.
having a hard time with it. You
Right.
have to try
With
again.
Mollytown, it was done one way. They came in, they closed out the old order. They showed us everything that was in compliance, all the houses, the drainage, the roadway, whatever, told us what was in compliance, and we closed out that order, barring the houses that had not been completed. Once that they received that order of that certificate of compliance, we permitted the 2 outstanding lots on the cul-de-sac at the top as separate filings.
So why can't we do that here?
Well, there's more
That's
work
one
than
choice.
that. So the second choice is what we did on the Meadows.
Roll the old one into the
was
new.
3 phases, and we just rolled the whole old order, didn't grant them any compliance, just said, this order's expired, the mechanism for getting you to, completion is to issue you a new order, not releasing you from any of the requirements of the old order, but allowing you to do this specific work. In the Meadows, that was phase 3. In this, it would be various portions of the project. So that's where we were trying to get this to go, but
Well, what's stopping it from getting there? Because
The way
that
it was-
sounds like that's the best course for
that's
the
just,
applicant.
the way it was filed was asking for specific work.
I think he's already started down that road because he's got the request for determination for
That's
one of
why
the
I
lots.
wanted to have that discussion happen in the RDA, because I believe the action we took on the RDA was the right one, because it was isolated enough, it was in the corner and separated from the resource areas, and there wasn't a whole bunch of other work other than that lot itself. And I wanted to be clear on that in the debate, and I think we made the right decision. But this can be done by rolling it all over with the exception of Lot 4, because of the action we just took, and I think that is the
We
best way,
can't really,
is the right way to
because-
do it.
You've got to release Lot 4 under the old order. So it's
Correct.
got to stay in the system somewhere.
I think it can be a finding. I don't think the determination in any way sort of mars the record on that. It could just be a finding that, an RDA was issued to get that work done sooner.
And I still am completely comfortable with the fact of making the right decision on that one, so, but I'm kind of going along with Al on this one. I think that coming in piecemeal with the second NOI for what they think to be the remaining piece of the work, and maybe it's all the remaining piece of work to be done, and then holding the rest of the prior order expired and silent till a later date isn't the right way to do it.
Well, not only that, Joe, but if they missed just one thing in this new request, then what happens? What do we get? What are they coming for? Yet another NOI? I mean,
That's the potential problem.
Well,
If
that's-
there are issues under the old order
Yeah.
that's expired that need to be addressed,
well, that's why I'm saying,
then that has to be dealt with under a new order. The way that was recommended to the applicant was to roll the old order into a new order.
Yep.
And everything in it
Fought me on how
takes
I
care
thought
of
this
that.
should be done.
No,
Okay,
we were
but I
willing
want-
to roll it in.
No, Hayes was not willing to roll it. I had more conversations with Peter about why that wasn't the right thing to do.
so we're in a position where we can help make this better?
He could do that now by, in a sense, modifying the order that he's got before us
Actually,
now
we
to
can-
do that.
Actually, we can do that
Like,
by...
this
when-
discussion is to give him guidance to go back and bring the message back to his consultant who works for them.
But also...
We only have a couple of choices.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, we could solve the same problem when we issue our order of conditions on this by, in the order, rolling and annexing the old order into this through the order of conditions.
Then we're pushing all the other properties on the lot are not listed in this certificate of compliance, or this order of notice of intent that's
But
before us.
wouldn't that happen
He'd
through
have to
rolling the
add
order?
He'd have to add them, agreeable to adding them all in.
Wouldn't that happen through rolling the order? Wouldn't that happen through annexing these?
The applicant has got a specific notice of intent before us.
Right.
It states specific properties.
Yeah.
Now, in order to roll the whole previous order of conditions into that, he would have to add all the other properties into this new
Wouldn't we be doing that by annexing the two orders?
By reference?
But the
Incorporated
applicant would have
by
to
reference,
agree.
exactly.
Would have to
The new
agree with
order,
it.
the new notice of intent has to ask for that, though.
Yeah,
We can't just do a unilateral.
no, I think it has to be
So which
requested
leaves us,
by
only
the applicant.
leaves us an option of either accept the application as is and consider on its face value or deny it.
Well, I think
I'm not
we don't have a
advocating
DEP
for
number.
denying the
No,
order.
I'm not saying tonight, I'm saying, you know,
Okay.
as far as information to bring back to Peter.
I'm trying to make it better for both them and us here. Trying to make it easier for them to get their project and easier for us to be able to complete our paperwork on this end.
Well, one thing that the applicant could do, if he wants to go along with this way we have suggested to him, is to withdraw this notice of intent, modify it, and, you know, resubmit it, because he's got to resubmit it to the state. It's got to say different verbiage than what it currently states. So the thing would be withdraw it completely. Submit a new notice of intent that does what it was suggested and provides all the plans that are necessary, or takes the old ones and rolls them into this along with any modified changes that is being proposed. And that way we can do just what, you know,
But that's not what we did on the other one. We didn't do it that way
we've
on the other
done
one.
two different ways. And,
But, yeah, I don't want to overcomplicate it. There are two ways to do it. One is what they did in Town, which is to simply get a compliance for the work that you have done, and specifically in that compliance certificate state, these things were not done, and then that subsequent filing picks up the ball of the difference. Town model, if you will.
Yep.
This almost gets there, except they don't have the compliance on the old order. So that's the problem
They
with
haven't
this one.
requested that as yet.
The other option is what we've done on Meadows and in other developments in town, is that they, in fact, simply refile for the entire project. We roll it in, and any changes that are coming as a result of, you know, time going by, they get memorialized in the new order. You know, shifting of buildings and driveways or whatever, that gets shown. The second model is much cleaner, and I think given the degree of construction we have here, is probably the best way to go. I'm not saying the other way isn't, but they would have to get the certificate of compliance for the work that's already done first, and we don't know if it's ready for that yet. So I think it kind of constrains us to really meeting only let's call it the Meadows model, not the Town, and, but not this application. This is something I think is just not the way to do it. I think it's incorrect.
I agree.
So we requested additional information, but I
It's
think,
just the matter of, you know, it's been advertised one way, so do we re-advertise to include,
I think we'd have to
withdraw
cross
and
all the i's
refile?
and dot the t's, cross the t's and dot the i's. You'd have to do that.
As Al said, just make it a requirement that we have to meet and finish out all the
I mean, it could
parts
come
of the
from
old order.
Commission that you want the whole order
I
rolled
said we
in.
can't do it unilaterally. If the applicant comes back and formally says we wish to broaden our NOI, I think we can consider it, and should consider it. But we just can't sit here at the table here and do that on our own, and have you guys say, we don't want to do it that way.
All right, so guys, let's give them some guidance, okay? Because we have a lot of opinions here. I'm confused, and I offered one. Let's give them some guidance so that they understand what we're asking. Because I don't want this to be considered to be punitive. I want to try to make it so that we're helping the project go and helping our administrator with paperwork. I mean, that's I think, should be our goal. So what are we recommending? What are we asking the applicant to do?
It seems to me, from what I've heard, what the board is recommending, and thereby asking the applicant, is to roll the old order into this new order. Define what the changes are. He would have to take the existing paperwork that's been submitted to us so far, and have to broaden it to make that request.
So
And then resubmit that to the state and resubmit it to us in the broadened form.
let me ask you a question. If the applicant were to request in writing that his old order be annexed and incorporated into the new order, so that we're looking at one package. If they made that request, we could grant that, correct?
The state needs notice. They don't need to re-notify.
The best thing to do is probably to call DEP tomorrow, in the next couple of days, and just get from them how they would, what's the best way to do that.
Okay.
That we'd like to not just permit this original work, but roll the whole order in, and how, from their
And
standpoint.
bear in
Because
mind-
from our standpoint, we could just do it that way, right? It's our paperwork, we
Well,
can.
I'm just trying,
It's not changing the work.
right.
The work is the same.
No, I get the work. I totally get what you're asking to do, but I'm just trying to, it's going to be an absolute mess if you have two orders going forward, and one is expired and not in compliance, and then you got
The other
new
one's
work under.
expired.
It's going to be a mess. We can do it that way if you want, but it's going to be an absolute mess when it comes time to getting certificates and selling and everything. You're going to be coming in front of us and saying, I got a buyer, we're ready to close, and we're going to be sitting there going, sorry, Charlie,
Sean, as usual, makes a good point. We don't allow two orders. Whether the other one's expired or not, doesn't matter. The first order still exists.
supersedes.
So we don't allow it. So this new one would have to supersede the other. It would. So that is the only way to do it.
Yeah, I mean, if you have an expired order and nothing, and it's not in compliance, whatever's not in compliance
It's
needs to
expired,
be in the
not
new order. It strikes me.
So-
Having walked in late.
No, but that's what I'm asking, because I understand what they want to.
Get it in compliance with the old order. It's probably even too late to do that if it's expired now, but.
Yeah.
And if it's not in compliance, then what's not in compliance needs to be part of a new order.
So a new order would be the superseding order, and it would incorporate the old one?
Well, in a sense, that's what he's got before.
So then that's what we have.
He's assuming, I suspect, by putting the new order that's before us tonight, or the new notice of intent, he's assuming that everything else not included in this new order of intent meets the requirements of the board. He can get a certificate of compliance, that he doesn't have to do any further work. Now, if that's not right, then he's approaching this in the wrong way.
If it doesn't work, we'd be willing to do it.
Right, and so I guess what Al was saying, and I guess we can go back to that, I'm not really sure he needs to amend his notice of intent. We're just going to give him an order that says we're rolling in the old order, and, you're not released from any of the requirements of the old order. You can do this remaining work, but you're now going to have to get, a certificate of compliance for the entire project and you wrote a lot of language for the Meadows order when we did it, I recall. So we know how to do that. So I mean, this doesn't have a DEP file number. I think just when we issue the order is going to say what it needs to say.
That is the cleanest way, absolutely.
So then we proceed.
Well, I think we have proceeded. So now the issue becomes, we're telling them that's what we're going to do. You're agreeing that's okay for you if you get a new order that rolls it all in.
You guys understand, right?
Yeah, we're going to,
All right.
We always were living under that idea anyway.
I assume that, but I felt like if we didn't say it, and then you come in some night 5 months from now, you know what I mean? I'd rather avoid that.
The simplest solution
would be to waive your requirement for the number of extensions you can get. The state allows you, I think, almost an unlimited,
Because
5 of
the
them.
bylaw limits him
Right.
to 2 extensions. And I know that
It's
was
the
done
town
at some point.
it's the town regulation, which you people could waive very
We
easily.
can't waive it because it's in the bylaw, not in the regulations. So without
maybe-
a bylaw change at town meeting, there's no way to
But
do
maybe you
it.
should consider
Well,
doing
that's
that.
something we can talk about at another
In the
time, no
future.
question. But we don't have
I understand.
we don't have the authority yet.
Yeah.
But that's certainly something we can talk about, but, all right, so then we're going forward, and it's going to be
Now we're
annexed.
just, unless there's any concerns about the work proposed, it's just a continuation until they get a DEP file number and we can,
You ought to talk to DEP to make sure
I
that
will.
you're not going to create problems for us.
So the documents we have,
Yeah, as long as we're solid
Jen,
referencing
documents that were submitted,
order, holding them
are they sufficient?
responsible for the
I'll look back at what the Meadows submitted to me when they did their Phase 3 development. I don't know that they asked to be permitted for anything more than Phase 3, and we issued them a permit that said, no, the whole thing is still on the table until it's
The
completed.
Meadows requested it.
I'm going to look back at that and see how they
I
did.
remember specifically they requested it because we were taking enforcement action at the time,
Okay,
and so they made the request to expedite the process.
Okay.
That I do remember about the Meadows.
Well, I'll look at it. If something else is required, I can get in touch with Ben and get that from him or the consultants.
Okay. No,
Get it done.
we're trying to help you. We really are, we're trying to help you.
Appreciate it.
But Jack brings up a good point that everybody should hear.
Yes.
Well, okay, the old order gets incorporated into the new order. Okay, I get that, and we're holding them responsible for all the work under the old order. As we're approaching, Unit 35, Unit 36, Unit 37, et cetera, but what if Unit 9 has a problem and needs to be rectified in order to satisfy this
Then he doesn't.
this duplicate order,
Then
or
they
this
do
this
that-
this
They do that.
the secondary order that incorporates the first one. Unit 9 was in the first one,
Now, the
incorporated
second
by reference into the second one. What happens? Is he allowed to do the work, or?
Yes.
one.
Yes. Now he would be allowed to
can
do
do
Because
it.
if you discover that and it wasn't, if we're not following this model, they'd have to come under a separate NOI to do that work.
Or a
All
modification.
the
Or a
work
modification or
that's
some
done-
other instrument.
That's the advantage to the annexation.
The whole order would be drainage, everything, if they had to do changes. That was the recommendation to begin with, was just to permit the whole thing over again under a new DEP file number. Their consultants wanted to permit pieces, and that's how we ended up where we are now. But it sounds like,
Any prior partials, we'd have a mess on our hands.
Right, but
The
there
fact
aren't.
that there aren't any cleans it up a lot.
And one thing Jack mentioned a second ago that I didn't hear mentioned now is if the regulations or laws have changed at all, it's obviously the current laws at the time the new NOI issue that's
isn't.
applicable.
There aren't any.
There aren't any.
Right,
Okay.
but there aren't any.
We're in luck on that one,
All right, good.
so far.
The new order would have to incorporate any new changes
Right.
in addition to whatever existed before.
All right, so what are we doing? Are we
Well,
continuing?
continue.
But we're continuing, and you're going to talk to DEP during the continuance period? All
Stormwater
right.
standards haven't changed? Stormwater standards haven't changed since this
No,
went in?
not since
Because the
this
first thing that went in was the
original
road.
2006,
2006 was first permitted, right?
Right.
6, 7,
I think, right?
standards were in place.
Even NIPD's and all that stuff?
If
NIPD's
is
doesn't-
separate.
Yeah,
Standard
you
standards.
must have a construction general permit for more than an acre of disturbance, done way back when. Well, that hasn't changed, so they should have one. Again, it's not something, we don't monitor it, it's not our permit.
True, but stormwater is part of our.
Right, and everything has to, the Meadows was the same, and, we held them to the same standard they were held to when they applied. And there's, stormwater is done, the only issue now is if it's not in compliance and they needed to do something. And we're saying permitting it this way would allow them to make any changes that they needed to make.
And standards haven't changed, as far as we know.
Stormwater, I can say emphatically, stormwater standards have not changed.
Well, they became, the guidelines became the part of the Wetlands Protection Act, but they didn't change.
They didn't
per
change,
se.
Yeah, okay.
But they always applied.
Right.
Yeah.
Because that would be the only major thing, I think, carrying over from the old order.
Did Lisa review this? I can't remember.
I think she did.
I think
yeah.
she did. Yeah.
Yes,
Okay,
I know
we've
she
had
did.
quite a discussion on this, so we need a continuance. Do I hear a
So moved.
second? All in favor of continuance?
Aye.
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
2 weeks?
May 13th.
Is 2 weeks okay?
It's 3 weeks, actually, May 13th.
Say it again?
May 13th,
May 13th, thank you.
right, so we can't close that.
That means we can't close, we can't vote to close anything, right?
Right.
Okay. Got it.
Okay, the next item before us is 40, yeah, 40, 242, 1650, 1653 Great Pond Road.
Grabbed it by mistake.
What do you need, Ben?
Yours ended up somewhere, yeah.
Yeah, this is the one you brought.
This was yours. This was the, probably,
Do you need those? No. All right, take it.
Which one is this?
This is in raised pond pump station.
Right here?
I have
Conservation Commission public hearing pursuant to the authority of the Wetlands Protection Act, Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, as amended, and the North Andover Wetland Protection Bylaw. The North Andover Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing on Wednesday, April 22nd, 2015, at 7 p.m. in the Town Hall Meeting Room, second floor, located at 120 Main Street, North Andover, Massachusetts. For the filing of a notice of intent by applicant, North Andover Division of Public Works, to alter land at 1653 Great Pond Road, map 62, parcel 22, for the purposes of replacement of the raised pond sewerage pumping station within bordering land subject to flooding and buffer zone to bordering vegetated wetland. Plans are available at the Conservation Commission Office, 1600 Osgood Street, Suite 2035, by Louis Napoli, Chairman.
You're on.
My name is Jack Troidel. I'm with Woodard and Kern. With me is Jason Creel, also of Woodard and Kern. We're here on behalf of the Department of Public Works for the raised pond pump station improvements work. The existing station is currently, it's a wastewater pumping station. It's currently located within the 50-foot no-build buffer zone of the adjacent wetlands. The entire area that we're talking about is within the 100-foot buffer zone. The purpose of this upgrade is to increase capacity of the station. Currently, during high flow periods, the DPW needs to bring out a diesel, a trailer-mounted pump that runs on diesel that they haul out here to the station, which is currently located in the floodplain, to convey the peak flow rates. We're looking at relocating the station outside of the 50-foot no-build zone, increasing storage capacity, and adding full pumping capability so the town doesn't need to bring external equipment out during those high flow periods. So these safety improvements include removing access, the entrance to the station. We shifted so it's outside of the floodplain, so if there's a 100-year storm, they can access the station without driving through any floodwaters. They don't need to haul out an external pump or anything like that. This station being adjacent to the surface water supply, it was very critical, so we looked at all the redundancy we could do and safety measures that we could incorporate into the design of the station. We ultimately had to shift it to the west to get it outside of the 50-foot buffer zone, because there are essentially, from the lake and the pond, you have two buffer zones that come together. So we shifted it over there. We have a larger wet well that provides the additional storage. Generally, the structures that are there now, we're providing new structures meeting current design standards with a standby diesel power generator, which we put further away from the resource areas. It's a paved area for when they go in for any maintenance or any work like that. The current station has no stormwater controls. It's in that gravel parking area, which is used for a variety of purposes. I think there's a walking trail back there as well. The new station, we've provided new stormwater controls meeting the stormwater policy, all the standards. Generally speaking, it consists of an inlet forebay, a storm scepter unit for TSS removal, and some oil containment as well, and two subsurface infiltration units. They're sized substantially larger than the required water quality volume. We wanted to increase the infiltration and reduce any potential runoff from the site. We did need to contact DEP in regards to infiltrating on the site. Typically, you're not permitted to infiltrate in a Zone A of a surface water supply. We spoke with DEP, and they indicated that a letter from the water supplier that this is in the best interest of the surface water supply protection, that it would be permitted. So there was a letter from DPW included in the applications to that effect. And the existing station, all of those structures will be removed upon completion of construction of the new station. So from a construction sequencing, this is actually much easier than a typical upgrade because we can build the new structures, tie it in, and then demolish all of the other structures. Do you have anything else you want to add? Yeah, so the existing gravel parking area is primarily used for access to the pond and the walking trails. We're going to regrade some of that, put down some fresh crushed stone, but we're going to tighten up the limits of that parking area to reduce how much extent of that area is taken up. We've talked about putting some boulders on the one end to keep people further from this buffer zone area. And then also we have an allowance of 12 shrubs that could be planted either along the pump station fencing or they could be located along one of those buffer zone limits.
And there would be a new kiosk too, I think.
Oh, yes,
there'd
there'd be a kiosk for the pond.
It actually expands the parking because the pump station takes up most of the parking in the raised pond parking lot now. So even though it'll pull the limits of the parking area away from the wetland resource areas, it will be expanded parking, I guess you could say, or easier parking.
Yes. It will actually make a little bit more sense. It'll be a little bit better laid out than it is right now. You can actually see, we do show the line, and I apologize, you kind of see it sort of meander around. That is effectively the edge of the existing gravel, which you can see does travel almost adjacent to the bank. So part of what was requested and what we've accommodated was to actually pull all of the parking back to outside the 25-foot no-touch zone, which can be seen basically right around here, with limited touching of anything else in that zone, in that old parking lot. With the removal of the existing station, we were able to put in a reasonably sized parking area that's a little bit more uniform and a little bit less amorphous to hopefully make that a little easier to use for folks to come in and out. And part of that request, both the whether it be landscape boulders or plantings, is to actually be installed along this northern edge to prevent use from allowing that parking area to continue to move closer to the wetland, plowing, just general movement of that gravel toward Ray's Pond to the north.
Yeah, we would be happy to take any questions. We can cover any area further if you'd like.
All right, we get questions from the board. Al?
No questions.
Joe?
More of a curiosity than an outright question for conservation. I know that you're talking about the size of the stations being driven by pumping capacity and increased storage and increased number of pumps in order to do that during the highest of flows, and those are typically wet weather flows. I mean, you've already done source shed evaluation and looked at the inflow sources, and you've tightened up all the inflow sources, and it just you would typically do that first rather than spend electricity trying to pump it against the tide. Do you know if the...
I haven't been involved in those particular instances in the sewer pipeline. Do you have any details to add?
I did the manhole project.
All the manholes from what's the
French Farm Road.
Yep, as well as all the ones, that was on the other side though, so I doubt it's this station. They did them over on Bonnie or Bridle Path, all out there in the wetland too.
They all come back this way.
They
do all come back.
right, so they raised them all so there was no inflow. And I know they've been working constantly to improve any sources of water coming in.
So, I mean, obviously, the footprint's just a lot bigger than what was there, and it's driven by, the need to pump that much water, storage for that matter.
Exactly.
And in the end, we are getting better separation between the two resource areas, and we are getting parking for the recreation component. The planning board piece, I know that they had mentioned that there was some ability to plant trees. I know that was a planning board concern. Do you think that's something that,
They wanted more planting along the road too, so I know we have some proposed potentially in the park. They wanted a reduction in the area between the 25 is to propose to be loamed and seeded, mostly because that's also the trail out of the parking lot. But I know they were looking for some screening at the front, and I talked to the planning interim planner today, and she said they were looking for some screening at the front and some planting to kind of reduce the amount of grass area. So,
Okay.
you know, I don't know if that maybe kind of extends it above 12 or if that's still something that would work, but I assume they're not opposed to planting whatever needs to be.
Yeah, I think we could add some additional plantings. You're talking beyond the parking lot in this area, and then maybe some of the screening.
Screening, right.
Yeah.
And I think the DPW said they still wanted to be able to see into the pump station, that they didn't want it to obstruct safety, you know, being able to see
Right.
if anybody were in there or anything like that, but also to, you know, still provide somewhat of a buffer to the street, so. Low shrubs, that was what I got from them.
Okay.
and that was actually one of my follow-ups, depending on how this is already fenced, this is going to be a fence around it,
Yes.
so any tree plantings wouldn't necessarily hinder operations, because the fence would have done that anyway, so.
Yep.
So I think as long as there's a meeting in the minds between what planning is
Well, we
looking
can
for.
talk about that too before.
That's all I had.
Yeah, I see you have a transformer on site toward the, I guess, left side of the plan. Is there any containment around that or anything? Diked or, containment for oil, any leakage, any?
Yeah, so that is up to the current standards of transformer design. So your typical older transformer that you see is a small concrete pad with a transformer on it. Now there's a full containment area around it, which is this crushed stone, and then it's the crushed stone, and then there's a 6-inch perimeter wall around that for containment purposes.
Contain all the oil that may leak out of there?
Yep.
Okay.
And I think, that keeps it all from running off if there were a leak.
Are there going to be any buildings on site, or is it all going to be sort of, you get a wet well, a dry well,
So-
all that? Yeah.
Yeah, the wet well and the dry well structures are below grade, so you're just going to see a flat concrete, a couple inches above grade.
Yep.
The transformer is just going to be a box on a pad. The generator is going to be a slightly larger box
Yeah.
on a concrete pad.
Is that powered by what? Natural gas?
Diesel.
Diesel?
Yeah, there's
Okay.
no natural gas in the area. We looked at all the fuel sources, and
Darn. Do you,
Yep.
okay,
The newer diesel generators have a integral to the mounting pedestal that has the belly tank that's in them.
exactly.
and they're
Belly
contained.
tank, double containment, has an interstitial.
Also have an interstitial leak sensor wired to an alarm. So if for any reason the internal tank were to leak into the annular space between the two, that would trigger an alarm, which would allow DPW to either assess or pump the tank down.
that's good. Okay, so there will be diesel fuel stored on site. Is it only at that standby generator? Okay, is there any other oil stored on site? I thought I heard you mention in your presentation. No?
I think I was just referring to the. Oh.
I think you were referring
Yes.
to the storm scepter, for whatever would go into the storm scepter between cleanouts, but that would only be.
Doesn't sound like a storm scepter thing, but,
The storm scepters, they have sediment containment, but then they also have a floatables chamber for preventing any floatables from flowing out.
okay. It's just a question. What are these two things that aren't labeled? There's a water quality device, and then just to the right of that, there's a square, a double square.
So that square is, it's an inlet forebay. So the flow
Okay.
will,
Stormwater
all the
structure.
stormwater will flow around
Okay.
the parking area into the storm scepter.
I was hoping it was that.
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
fine.
No,
Okay.
it's not a separate structure.
And then there are two round tank-looking things, just to the right, and
Those are the old ones that we take out.
those are to be removed?
The black dots?
No, there are,
They're part of the old system
The
that you
old-
are...
These two here,
yes.
those are that was the original wet well and the auxiliary wet well that was installed later. Those will be removed.
Okay. I'm all set.
When you say remove, you're gonna just break the top of the cans off and fill them, or are you gonna be literally excavating them out?
Typically, it'll be, you'll pressure wash it, clean it up, take the top off, and then you'd fill it.
And fill it.
Usually, I think they would be puncturing the bottom somehow, but yeah.
Okay, so they're not physically coming out. I mean, a lot more invasive type of work to take them
Yeah,
out
yeah.
than what you're actually
But
doing
the top,
to abandon in place.
yeah, but the top part will come off, so we're not going to just remove it to 6 inches below grade. We'll take the top section.
Will people be able to access, there is a trail back here alongside Ray's Pond. Will they be able to access that from the parking area?
Yes.
Can you show us where that trailhead is?
During
Yeah, if you
construction or
can-
after?
No, after.
Oh, no,
ongoing.
after the,
I believe the edge of the parking area, the path is, oh yeah.
it's right at the corner of the parking lot.
In this vicinity.
Up there. Let's see, where's the, okay, here it is.
Okay, here it
I
comes
got
down
it.
along here.
Okay.
So it would intersect the back of the parking area. And because that's, there is a little bit of leeway in that, how we put that together, only because we do have to make sure, I think originally it was discussed to make that pedestrian only, but because the sewer will require maintenance, that there has to be some room for the DPW to get a vehicle access to it.
Move a boulder or something and get a truck in there. I had sent Kate a comment about the detail on the infiltrators show cleanouts, but you don't show the cleanouts on the plan.
Clean out will be 2 feet in from the inlet on each structure, consistent with the
detail.
With the detail. I think actually the detail shows it a little bit centered.
Centered,
That
yeah.
was a standard detail per the stormwater standards, which requires it. I believe, I don't remember off the top of my head the distance in off the inlet, but requires the inlet be visible. It will be placed there.
Well, because a couple times we've had issues where the cleanouts get buried in or paved over or so.
In this case, these will be, because I believe
One is in the
pavement, will be in a cast road box, so that should not disappear. The other will probably be proud by a couple inches of the soil. Rather than flush, it'll be up,
Okay.
so that it can be maintained and accessible.
Is that second one's in the gravel area?
No, this one is in the paved area, and then the second unit is over here, but the pavement ends approximately here. So this is grass area for access to the transformer or the generator. And we scaled our pavement back. Initially, we were going to have it further out. We tried to minimize that impervious area.
The one that, I'm just thinking that would they plow that access to be able to get in there and, inspect the station daily? You don't want that thing up a couple inches, you want that flush too. That
Yeah,
second one.
so we plan for the plowing will end, in theory, they should stop at approximately the end of the pavement. And then we have bollards 10, 15 feet beyond that, and then the infiltration system is beyond that.
So the cleanout's beyond that.
Yeah, so they shouldn't be plowing that.
And you would never need to be in there for access until way after the snow melts anyway.
Exactly.
Okay.
So what steps are you taking to ensure that they don't plow beyond the end of the paving? What-
Bollards, yeah, we put bollards.
That's sufficient?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's 3 of them. They're not going to plow over them.
Oh.
They'll be yellow and,
Well,
This year we
okay.
might.
well, this year, I mean,
I got news for you.
they wouldn't have plowed over them. They might have piled the snow over them, but
If you think they won't plow over anything.
They may be tilted after the first year.
yeah, we've seen one site this year where one of the bollards is, there was a propane tank on the other side too, so.
That's what I'm telling you.
But I mean,
I don't have great
only one of
confidence.
3. I mean,
Okay.
it is DPW's site. They're not gonna, they're not gonna be looking to,
Nobody ever intentionally damages their property.
right, exactly. I think that's the best you can ask for.
Can I Can I go back to one thing we talked about? Can we go back to the wet well removal? Can you run through the procedure again and explain to me the safeguards in place? Because either I didn't hear everything you heard or I missed something, but can you go through that?
On the decommissioning.
You're going to decommission and remove and stabilize. Tell me again how you're going to do it?
Yep, so once the new station is up and running,
Yep.
over here we have a generator that's just on a concrete pad, so it'll just be taken out.
Yep.
It's pretty simple. The wet well and the valve, the wet well and the dry well go down a certain depth. All equipment and material will be removed out of them. Clean the wet well, take off the top section, typically down to around 4 feet, and then it would just be filling it with either a flowable fill or just clean fill. Typically, we require that you puncture the bottom so that you don't have a hydrostatic issue there.
Do you have specifications on the job to direct the contractor as to how to do it, or you leaving it up to their discretion?
Oh, no, yeah, we have a specifications booklet this thick that
On how you want
covers
it done?
that. Yeah,
Okay.
the demolition section, everything.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Jack, are you finished with your questions?
Yes.
Deb, do you have questions?
Yeah, I just wanted to know if, for the stormwater BMPs, you will be complying totally with that, with all of the best manufacturing practices
Yes.
of stormwater management. Okay.
So because the site was relocated off on that side, we looked at it as a new not a redevelopment site, but a new construction site. So we met each of the standards, so all the peak flow rates and everything.
Deviate from any.
Well, we contacted DEP to be permitted to use infiltration on this site, so that's typically something that wouldn't be.
And they approved of it?
They approved, yeah, with that letter.
All right. Thank you.
I didn't see the letter.
Todd, you have any questions?
I do. So I've driven by the site a million times. I didn't even know there was a pumping station there, to tell you the truth. But I did bring it up on a maps. And you're not removing any trees to do this work?
Oh, no, they are.
Yeah. So the trees along the roadway to the, if you're looking at the pumping station to the right, those are all.
Sorry, we should have added this slide.
Yeah, that's helpful. Yeah.
So the existing, a close-up of the existing station here, you can see the generator, the wet well, valve vault, they stick up a couple, they were actually raised at one point because they were below the 100-year floodplain. So they're raised to get up above the 100-year floodplain, but to access that, we'd be in 2 to 3 feet of water. Perimeter fencing. This is that station we'd be looking at, yes, going into that new area, putting the new station here, and then, so this area, taking this equipment out, making it a gravel parking area, but limiting that extent here, and if we put some shrubs, loam and seed back in there, and some barrier protection of some type to keep cars.
Bollards. What about big stones? Could you do that instead? I mean, I think that would go good with the environment out there aesthetically, and, you know, those things shouldn't move, I would say. But
Bollards are only between the infrastructure of the pumping station. On the outside, there's fence along the road, and then along the other areas, it is big stones.
it is big stones. Yeah, so along the 25 that's on the back of the plan where the wetland line is, because it's right up to the 25 at a point, you're going to have, up until the 25, it's going to be gravel and grass, and then that mix, and then you're going to have big stones there to kind of delineate that.
So we had some shrubs that could be planted there. We have a note that if any large stones are removed from the excavation, that they would be lined up along that perimeter to prevent vehicles from encroaching further into that buffer zone. Yep.
Okay.
But that, we had, as currently stated, is any large stones that come out would be placed there.
Yep.
We weren't purchasing, 10 large stones to put there.
Right.
Right, and I think DPW has access to stone.
Yeah, there are many options that can be
Well,
covered.
that's just something I think I'd like to see there instead of just planting, something to really make sure that nobody goes beyond that area for either vehicles or, well, it's not going to stop trash from moving, but at least it'll prevent vehicles from going over into the 25. Thank you.
Has this gone up to bid yet?
No.
It's not, so, the reason why I asked the question is to see the notation on here, this plan set is is for permitting only and not for construction. Now, I mean, ultimately, what we want is the order condition, which would agree with the approved plan to be the contract document. So at some point, you're going to be likely to see what is the approved plan that we give an order conditions on. That has to be annexed to your bid document.
In fact, they always invite me to meetings
To make certain that that happens, okay.
Yeah, in this case, this was in order for the submission, it was a stamp drawing. And what we didn't want was someone to take, at some point, get a hold of this stamp drawing
And use
and
it,
start building with it. Obviously, because it certainly wouldn't include any requests that you had, so.
I'll say.
Okay. Any questions from our audience of one?
No, I'm waiting on another matter.
Okay. Now, do I hear a motion?
We can't close, but I will draft for 3 weeks.
Why can't we close?
Because we have a 3-week meeting gap. We'll exceed
We
the
have-
21 days. In that time, maybe we can discuss a general planting plan or something like that, and we can draft the order of conditions and be ready to close an issue at the next meeting, May 13th.
Do I hear a motion to continue?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So we'll continue to the next meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Continuing on, we have two continuations, 242-1644, 287 Forest Street. Request to continue to the next meeting, I guess.
May 13th.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
242-1643, 674 Turnpike Street. Request to continue to May 13th.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, and what we have here is 242-1647, 172 Summer Street. Okay.
So, we were holding off on this for a review of the wetland line, which I think it was like 2 weeks ago when I was finally able to get out there and review the wetland line. I had no issues with the wetland line, but Al had mentioned that there is a vernal pool on the site. It does. We heard the wood frogs quacking away. There is no definition of the vernal pool within that wetland, so what I suggested to Mr. D'Angelo was that as you turn the corner, the last flag you see on the plan is 844, but the wetland makes a turn toward the bottom of the page, and flag A46, which would be equivalent to the 90-degree or so turn in the line. Beyond that turn, I would ask that the plan be revised to show a 50-foot no disturb and a 75-foot no build, acknowledging that somewhere out there is vernal pool habitat. You know, I don't think he wants to hold up his project anymore to determine the extent of the vernal pool habitat, and it doesn't affect the project anyway. That 50 and 75 foot would be outside of his erosion control line. So that would be the only change that I would recommend moving forward. The rest of the project was discussed at a prior hearing. It says roof infiltration, you know, construction access, materials stockpiling, I think all the other things we discussed, so.
The vernal pool doesn't extend up there into A30, A32?
That's an intermittent swale, completely a swale, no vernal pool habitat there. And I'm not even sure that the vernal pool extends up as far as that, but without further investigation, it's probably just easier to,
Usually acknowledging that the buffer's being met, being
Right.
maintained, and it
sounds
doesn't
like
affect the project.
Taking a conservative approach, which I appreciate.
He wants the privacy anyway out there.
And a vernal pool, vernal pool will always give you privacy.
Okay, any questions before? Okay, we'll need to continue.
We'll continue, but we'll draft, issue, close everything at the next meeting. You'll get your order. May 13th is our next meeting.
So is the public hearing closed now?
We can't close the public hearing because if we did so, we'd have to issue you an order in 21 days. We can barely do that because the next meeting is 21 days out. So what we do is continue, close, issue, and give you your order. Basically, it's the same time frame. We just can't close.
Do what you have to do.
Okay.
You do it well.
You'll be all set by May 13th. You'll be all set. Well, yeah, 10 days after May 13th, but we'll get rid of it on that day.
Is there an appeal period or something?
10 days beyond when we issue next week, or in 3 weeks.
You'll be happy.
All right, great, thank you very much.
You don't have to be here.
Your motion to continue?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Sean, Deb.
Aye.
It was Deb, Sean.
Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't get a hurry.
Donna's slowing down.
Okay, that's,
You're all set.
you're welcome.
Good night.
No, under general business, we have 2 certificates of compliance requests, and they're both being continued until May 13th. 242-1589 for 1077 Osgood Street. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Then 242-1584 COC request for 250 Clark Street.
So moved.
I think Sean got that one.
Discussion.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All right. Do I hear a request?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.